Hello and welcome to the FamilyHistoryFoundation.com's YouTube channel. And today we're going to look at Samuel Johnson, the dictionary maker, a lexicographer's life. And what you're seeing here is basically the audible version of a blog post that I write over on FamilyHistoryFoundation.com. So head over there and check it out. And also little plug. You guys can like and subscribe to this channel over here and get updates if you appreciate the content. Okay, let's jump into it. Samuel Johnson, dictionary maker, a lexicographer's life. Among the names of the greatest literary minds of all time towers Dr. Samuel Johnson. Not only did he produce thousands of writings, ghost writings, sermons, and literary pieces, he also wrote the Dictionary of the English Language in the 18th century, at a time when such a notion might have even been considered a little absurd. The question you should be asking yourself is, how does one write a dictionary? Let that sink in for a moment. Dr. Samuel Johnson wrote an entire dictionary. Although it wasn't the first dictionary ever, it was the first of its kind and a monument to our English language and human knowledge. There is no overstating this incredible feat. Linguistic background. As a linguist, I've taken several lexicography classes, and lexicography is the art and science of creating dictionaries. And let me tell you, when you are tasked with the goal of writing even the simplest of definitions that are airtight, believe me, it's not as easy as it sounds. Samuel Johnson's dictionary was published in 1755. It wouldn't be until over a century later, in the 1880s, that James Murray, in very unusual circumstances, would create the Oxford English Dictionary, or the OED. His was a tale of madness, and along with a convicted ex-Civil War American in London, it's an incredibly convoluted story. For comparison, we also have Noah Webster, an American lexicographer and dictionary maker who published his first dictionary in 1806, a compendious dictionary of the English language. Noah Webster's life is an amazing tale, which is also interwoven with our American Revolution. For his accomplishments, both politically and linguistically, he should stand as one of our founding fathers, in my opinion. For a great read on the life and contributions of Noah Webster, I'd recommend The Forgotten Founding Father by Joshua Kendall. After the rights to Webster's dictionary became the property of the Merriam family, posthumously, his work became what we now know as the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. In my opinion, it's an affront, as Webster's name should come first. Extreme personality. Dr. Samuel Johnson was a case study in conflicting personalities. On the one hand, he was expeditious in his work. On the other hand, caustic and derisive with his words. As in all artistic types, those were his extremes. This was not always the case for Dr. Johnson, as he was also kind to the poor and a loving and doting husband, when it occasioned him. We find his extremes come to head in the pressures of life. When confronted about his physical maladies by childhood friends or Londoners of better standing, it is said that Samuel Johnson was so witty that he could hit you with a retort to an insult that would leave you stinging for the rest of your life. Yeah, he was that good. Here you can see a portrait by Joshua Reynolds, his best friend, sourced from Wikimedia. It's the classic pose of Dr. Samuel Johnson. Even luminaries like Adam Smith and Alexander Pope wrote about Samuel Johnson's wit and sarcasm. They also noted that he was among the preeminent scholars of his age. Johnson's friend and biographer James Boswell even collected and cataloged his insults as a part of his social repartee. In his book Samuel Johnson, The Struggle, Author Jeffrey Myers aptly encapsulates the everyday life anguish that Johnson carried around in his subtitle, The Struggle. It's spot on. What was the source of that struggle? Well, to put it plainly, he was classically and interminably English. Although he struggled with many personal demons, he also butted heads with what I would call an extreme version of writer's block. Myers, in his book in 2008, tells us that Johnson's inability to complete a piece of writing made him feel that time was running out and often led to thoughts of futility and death. That's what he says in his book, 2008, pages 110 through 111. Samuel Johnson, the dictionary maker, was enthralled by learning. He often said that the best tool in the making of his dictionary was simply reading. However, Johnson never just simply read. He was a voracious reader. From what historical sources tell us, Johnson's personality was dominated by books and reading. His propensity to learn was almost unequaled in his day. Dr. Johnson, although he disliked that sobriquet, was also always inclined to demonstrate his superior intellect. According to author Jeffrey Myers, this came from his father's ineptitude in business, their lower class birth, the fact that his mother's family looked down on the Johnsons, as well as the physical maladies that Samuel Johnson had acquired from a very rough childbirth in Lichfield, England. And you can see here a picture of the birthplace of Samuel Johnson in Lichfield. In that respect, I think that Samuel Johnson's story and temperament are relatable to many of us today. Although we would never reveal our most inner secrets or put our troubled backgrounds on display as such, biographical books about Dr. Johnson are quite revealing and actually make him quite empathetic to us in the struggles that he not only endured, but also overcame. There is a lesson in his life for perseverance and a dogged yet humble belief in oneself. Samuel Johnson, the dictionary. Samuel Johnson took 9 years to write his dictionary, although he was only paid for 3 years' work. Johnson was commissioned and began crafting definitions in 1746 and did not finish until 1754. Although he had a small team of workers who took scraps of notes and compiled them for him, the work and brain power of the Dictionary of the English Language was basically all Samuel Johnson. In June 1746, Johnson signed the contract for a fee of £1,575 and rather optimistically agreed to complete the project in 3 years, according to Myers, 2008, page 158. Although Johnson's contract may have initially gotten the best of him, his residuals and reputation because of the dictionary increased dramatically over time. Finally published on April 15th, 1755, it contained over 40,000 words, 116,000 quotations, 2,500 pages, and was published in 2 large folio volumes. The introductory sales price to the Dictionary of the English Language was £4.50 in 1755 dollars. That's about £1,000 in 2019 pounds sterling, or about $1,300 in American dollars. In the same vein, if Samuel Johnson got paid or underpaid £1,575 for his project, that's the equivalent of over £300,000 today. That's roughly $401,000 in 2019 US currency. And by the way, all figures are inflation adjusted. Still, that's no paltry sum considering those amounts. To accomplish his almost Herculean task, Johnson hired 6 apprentices to work under him and do his bidding, all of whom got paid about £2 a week. These 6 junior lexicographers / scribes were Alexander McBean, William McBean, who were brothers, Robert Shields, Francis Stewart, Mr. Maitland, and a V.J. Peyton. You can see here the cover page or the preface page for Samuel Johnson's Dictionary of the English Language as it was originally printed. Notice down here it says Volume 1 as well. Continuing on Samuel Johnson's dictionary, a major functional difference between Samuel Johnson's dictionary and other previous dictionaries was that Johnson was descriptive, not prescriptive. According to Myers 2008, page 158. To a modern day linguist, this means everything. Prescriptivism is stating the way things should be, while descriptivism is stating the way things are or appear to be. Descriptivism is scientific observation, describing the universe. This was an absolute revolution. Likewise with words, a dictionary is tasked to describe a language in terms of the usage of its words and not overlay value judgments as to their correct or incorrect usage. This naturally meant that rude words were also included as a matter of course. Although Johnson was not entirely immune to prescriptivism, his dictionary provided a leap forward in the art and craft of lexicography. What made his work stand out from the other dictionaries of the time, some of which contained more words, was that it quoted extensively from literary sources. According to Landau's 1996 book, Johnson had deliberately excluded many obsolete and foreign terms, as well as most scientific terms, and did not include names. The Scott Bailey was designed to appeal to common people who wanted a basic tool without frills. As distinguished from the literary appeal of Johnson's work, with its extended quotations from great writers of past and present. That is from Landau, 1996, page 52. The ultimate and lasting legacy of Samuel Johnson's Dictionary of the English Language was that it brought into the light a language which was still considered somewhat inferior in the 18th century. As strange as it sounds, English was not held in high regard in comparison to established literary traditions such as German and French. Samuel Johnson was a staunch Anglophile. Johnson almost single-handedly elevated English as a proper language of culture and expressiveness by virtue of the fact that his dictionary not only clearly defined its terms, but also linked those terms to great writers, philosophers, and poets of England. The dictionary was published on 15 April 1755, available in 2 folio volumes, running to more than 2,500 pages in 2 columns at a price of £4, 10 shillings. Strahan printed 2,000 copies. The volumes weighed 20 pounds, unwieldy for just about everybody. Proud in its prodigious bulk, as he boasted to Thomas Warton. And that quote is from Martin, 2009, page 264. Johnson's dictionary included 116,000 quotations. The bulk of those quotations not only came from pre-existing sources, but also his social circle. You can see here Johnson's London Dictionary House. This is where much of the dictionary, in fact all of it, was produced in London. Ambivalent social circle. Samuel Johnson ran around with a group of perpetually ambivalent friends. They were ambivalent because, on the one hand, they all got on as intellectual equals who thrived off each other's company, yet at the same time could deeply despise one another, which often led to physical altercations. Among Johnson's closest friends were Joshua Reynolds, Edmund Burke, Oliver Goldsmith, James Boswell, John Taylor, Giuseppe Baretti, and David Garrick. There is no doubt that his warmest and closest male friend was Joshua Reynolds, 1723 to 1792. He simply regarded Reynolds as a great man. Reynolds maintained that Johnson formed my mind and brushed off from it a deal of rubbish. And that's from Martin, 2009, page 284. The thing that is worth noting about the social life of Samuel Johnson is that he was not only somewhat itinerant during his life, but he was also a perpetual night owl. Often staying up well into the wee hours of the night, he enjoyed the company of other thinkers and philosophers as they would famously walk the very dangerous streets of London together. Although their activities were mostly conversational, he and his friends were definitely known to have engaged in the seedier side of what London had to offer. Absent from Samuel's social circle was his wife Elizabeth. What this means is that the Johnsons did not entertain from their house in Lichfield as a family. Rather, wife was at home and Samuel was off in London writing and socializing. Elizabeth Johnson was born Elizabeth Jervis in 1689 and was known by her nickname Teddy, which was a Midlands variant of Lizzie. However, when Samuel Johnson met Teddy, she was known as Elizabeth Teddy Porter, as she was previously married and then widowed. The two would marry in 1735. Johnson was 25. Teddy was 46. Despite their separation, Johnson was a man about town. Social interaction kept him going, and intellectual stimulation drove him forward. If you analyze the list of people that hung around with Johnson, they were all literary in some way, shape, or form. They were either writers, stage performers, or connected to Samuel as a ghostwriter. And it is a little-known fact that he wrote volumes of sermons, speeches, introductions, manuscripts, poems for other people. Samuel Johnson's output was absolutely prolific and startlingly diverse. Johnson painting by Joshua Reynolds. Joshua Reynolds, again, was his closest friend. In contrast, Johnson, the daily man, was a mess. He definitely had an artistic temperament in that he stayed up really late, never woke up on time, was consistently distracted, and had major bouts of procrastination. However, once Johnson got into the groove, he was laser focused on his work and could write up to 5 pages an hour for hours on end. Now think about it. I didn't say type. I said write. For the mid-18th century, that's an almost unheard of feat of speed. Not only that, what he wrote by hand did not need correction. It came out flawless the first time. Not me. I think I retyped this paragraph at least 5 times. Samuel Johnson's satire. My very first impression of Samuel Johnson came as a child watching one of my favorite TV shows, Blackadder. Starring the always irreverent Rowan Atkinson, Season 3, or Series 3 if you're in the UK, aired an episode entitled Ink and Incapability, which parodied the efforts of Samuel Johnson to acquire patronage from the inept prince played by Hugh Laurie. Johnson was played by the famous British actor Robbie Coltrane. Sources. These are the sources that we've covered. And of all the sources on the life of Samuel Johnson I've listed below, if you are looking for a great book to read on his life, then I would definitely recommend Peter Martin's Samuel Johnson, A Biography. It is wonderfully written and the most detailed account of his life that I have read. Martin's book paints a very heartfelt portrait of Johnson the man. It also unlocks his labors in creating his dictionary much more than Myers. In fact, I would not recommend reading Myers on this subject, as he is a dreadful writer and barely even mentions the dictionary in any aspect of Johnson's life. I found Peter Martin's book while browsing through half-price books in Texas while I was there, so you know it's a winner, which is a good place to be. So here are the sources that I've covered in this. Again, Peter Martin's Samuel Johnson, A Biography, Jeffrey Myers' book, Johnson, The Struggle. Sidney Landau is where I took the lexicography snippet from, which came from dictionaries, The Art and Craft of Lexicography, which I read in graduate school. James Boswell's The Life of Samuel Johnson. And you can also read online the original dictionary of the English language, which has been digitized. And last but not least, this presentation and channel is brought to you by Family History Foundation. And go over and check out the blog or website over at familyhistoryfoundation.com. We have more articles and stuff to read and research and genealogy. And I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation.